I never intended to hide my success. Life has an uncanny way of revealing people's true colors when they believe you have nothing to offer. My name is Emma Chen, and I've always known that appearances can deceive. Growing up in a modest apartment above my parents' tiny grocery store in San Francisco's Chinatown, I watched them pour their lives into 14-hour workdays just to ensure there was food on our table and a chance for me to succeed. Their lessons shaped me. True worth isn't measured by wealth, but by character and determination. Emma, mai tin du shaiksin dijihui, my mother would say every morning as she straightened my collar, her hands worn from labor but tender as silk. Each day is a new opportunity. While my peers were playing video games or watching TV, I was helping stock shelves, learning inventory management, and poring over accounting books. My father's old calculator became my toy, and numbers my steadfast companion. But beyond the math, I absorbed the ethos of their work. Respect every customer, no matter what they could afford. Treat everyone like family, my father would say. You never know their story. Their sacrifices bore fruit when I earned a full scholarship to Stanford's business school. The day I received my acceptance letter, my mother cried, and my father closed the store early for the first time in 2 decades. We celebrated with a feast of dumplings and my mother's special red bean soup. At Stanford, I worked relentlessly, channeling the grit my parents had instilled in me. Between classes, I developed an innovative supply chain management system that caught the eye of Genesis Tech, a rising Silicon Valley powerhouse. Your algorithm could transform global distribution. Marcus Sterling, their CEO, said during my final presentation, "We'd love for you to join us after graduation." The offer was beyond anything I'd imagined, a senior position with significant stock options. But I surprised Marcus by requesting to start in operations instead, learning the business from the ground up, just like I had in my parents' store. Most people want to start at the top, Marcus remarked, his curiosity piqued. I want to earn it, I replied. How can I lead if I don't understand the foundations? Impressed, he agreed. Officially, I was Senior Vice President of Operations, but few colleagues knew my true title, a secret I preferred. That's how I met James. One rainy Tuesday morning in the company cafeteria, I was immersed in inventory reports when someone jostled my table, nearly spilling my coffee. Oh no, I'm so sorry. A tall man with kind eyes and a crooked tie scrambled to steady the cup. I swear, I'm usually more coordinated. Laughing, I replied, no harm done. I'm Emma. James Wilson. His warm smile tugged at something in me. Let me make it up to you. Coffee's on me. One coffee led to lunch, then dinner, and soon we were inseparable. James worked in marketing, his creative flair complementing my analytical nature. He loved hearing about my work in operations, always curious about my day. You don't just see problems, he said one evening as we strolled along the bay. You see solutions. When he proposed 6 months later, I said yes without hesitation. It wasn't until we began planning the wedding that I encountered his mother, Victoria Wilson. Our first meeting took place in their Pacific Heights mansion, a monument to old money. Victoria greeted me from atop a marble staircase, her demeanor icy. So, she began surveying me through designer glasses. You work in operations? She practically spat the word. Yes, I said evenly, offering no further explanation. And your parents? They own a grocery store in Chinatown. Small business owners, she murmured, exchanging a look with her husband. Well, everyone has to start somewhere. James squeezed my hand but said nothing, a red flag I chose to ignore. In the weeks leading up to our wedding, Victoria's subtle digs and overt meddling became routine. She dismissed my preferences as charmingly simple and insisted on orchestrating everything. Darling, she'd say, patting my hand as if consoling a child. Leave it to those who understand these things. Even my wedding dress, a modern design with traditional Chinese accents, became a point of contention. But dear at the street Francis, wouldn't you prefer something more appropriate? This is appropriate, I replied firmly. It honors both cultures. She pursed her lips. Well, I suppose it's your decision. Though James's first girlfriend, Caroline, always had such elegant taste. European, you know. James, yet again, said nothing. Despite Victoria's interference, the wedding was beautiful. My parents sat in the front row, tears glistening in their eyes. Meanwhile, Victoria held court, regaling her bridge club with tales of James' accomplished cousins. Of course, not everyone marries up, I overheard her say, her tone dripping with disdain. Post-wedding life didn't ease the tension. Monthly family dinners became tests of patience as Victoria's barbs continued. Emma, dear, could you help the housekeeper clear the table? You must feel more at home in the kitchen. Or, James, Caroline just made partner at her law firm. Isn't it inspiring when people reach their full potential? By Christmas, Victoria announced a grand holiday dinner, emphasizing, everyone who matters will be there. Everyone who matters, I echoed. Yes, well, you understand. Family. James stared into his wine glass, silent as always. What Victoria didn't know was that her Christmas dinner would unravel her assumptions in ways she could never predict. But that's a story for another time. We arrived at the Wilson mansion at exactly 6 o'clock. True to form, Victoria had spared no expense. Thousands of twinkling white lights adorned the 3-story facade, and an enormous wreath with a gold bow graced the front door. Through the frosted windows, I glimpsed a dining room that looked like a luxury magazine spread, complete with towering floral arrangements and gleaming crystal. James, Emma, Victoria greeted us, her smile just as polished and cold as the silverware inside. She wore an elegant designer gown, undoubtedly more expensive than what she imagined I earned in a year. James, darling, everyone's gathered in the living room. Emma, perhaps you could lend a hand in the kitchen with the appetizers. Mom, James began, but I touched his arm lightly. It's fine, I said, my voice calm. Victoria's lips curled in a smug smile. So considerate. That's what we love about her, isn't it, James? Always willing to pitch in. James offered a weak laugh and followed her into the living room, leaving me alone in the hallway. In the kitchen, I found Maria, the Wilsons' housekeeper of 15 years, commanding a small team with the precision of a general. When she spotted me, her warm smile reached her eyes. Mrs. Emma, what are you doing in here? You're a guest. Apparently not, I replied with a wry smile. Still, I rolled up my sleeves and began helping her arrange the smoked salmon canapes. The doorbell chimed again, followed by Victoria's delighted exclamations as more guests arrived. Among the voices, one stood out, Caroline. Of course, James' ex-girlfriend had somehow found her way onto the guest list. When it was time for dinner, Maria and I carried the appetizers into the formal dining room. The sight that greeted me was as grand as I'd imagined. A massive table set for 24, each place adorned with Waterford crystal and antique silver. Name cards, written in Victoria's flowing calligraphy, marked every seat. I walked the perimeter of the table, scanning for my name. It wasn't there. Oh, Emma, Victoria's voice rang out, syrupy with fox concern. We're just a bit tight on space at the main table. I'm sure you understand. Family comes first. Why don't you join Maria in the kitchen? You two seem to get along so well. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me, some curious, others uncomfortable. Caroline's smirk was barely concealed behind her champagne glass. James's father, Richard, cleared his throat. Perhaps we can fit another chair. Nonsense, Victoria interrupted smoothly. Emma understands. She's used to more casual settings. My cheeks burned, but I forced a neutral expression. Years of handling tough negotiations had taught me the value of composure. Of course, Victoria, whatever makes you comfortable. As I turned to leave, I caught James's gaze. He looked uneasy but said nothing. Something inside me hardened. Back in the kitchen, Maria wrung her hands. Mrs. Emma, this isn't right. Let me speak to Mrs. Wilson. It's fine, I said, pulling out my phone and sending a quick text. I sat at the small kitchen table and opened my laptop. At least let me fix you a plate, Maria insisted. Thank you, Maria, but I have some urgent work to handle. Major supply chain issue. I offered a reassuring smile as I reviewed the data Marcus had sent. The problems in Asia were more severe than I'd hoped, but not insurmountable. From the dining room came the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Victoria's voice floated above the rest, recounting tales from James's childhood. Caroline chimed in with anecdotes from their high school days. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The doorbell rang again. Maria moved to answer it, but I stopped her. That's for me. I opened the door to find Marcus Sterling, CEO of Genesis Tech, standing in his signature tailored suit, a look of mild concern on his face. "Emma," he greeted me warmly. "Apologies for intruding on your Christmas dinner, but we need your input on the Asia situation." "Of course," I said, gesturing for him to come in. "Though technically, I'm not at the dinner table." His brow furrowed. "Not at the table? Why not? Why don't we find out together?" We walked into the dining room, where the hum of conversation stopped abruptly. 24 heads swiveled toward us, curiosity and confusion etched on their faces. Victoria stood quickly, her expression hard to read. "I'm so sorry, sir. The help isn't supposed to let visitors in unannounced. Emma, you should know better." Marcus blinked, then turned to me. "Help? I'm confused. Why is my senior vice president of operations eating in the kitchen?" The silence was deafening. Victoria's face drained of color. "Senior vice president?" "Yes," Marcus said, oblivious to, or perhaps enjoying, the tension. "Emma's leadership has been pivotal to Genesis Tech's success. Her supply chain system is groundbreaking. Surely her husband has mentioned her accomplishments." All eyes turned to James, who looked like he might faint. I didn't know," he stammered. "You never asked," I said quietly. Caroline's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering against the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. But you work in operations," Victoria sputtered. "You said." "I do," I replied, my tone calm. "As the senior vice president, I chose to start at the ground level, just as my parents did in their modest grocery store." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Speaking of which, Emma, your mother's dumplings are extraordinary. The board loved them at our last meeting." Victoria collapsed into her chair, her shock plain. "Board meetings?" "Yes," Marcus continued. "Emma's one of our youngest board members. Her stock options alone are worth—" "Marcus," I interjected gently, "perhaps we should handle the Asia situation elsewhere. I wouldn't want to disrupt the family dinner." I turned to Victoria, my gaze steady. "Thank you for making my place in this family so abundantly clear. It's helped me make some important decisions." "Emma, wait," James said, finally standing. "We need to talk about this." "We do," I agreed. "But not tonight. Tonight, I have a company to run." As I left, I paused. "Oh, and Victoria, those dumplings you dismissed last month? They were a hit at our last gala, $200 per plate, quite the success with the governor." Marcus and I walked out into the crisp night air. As we approached his car, he glanced at me. "I've been wondering how long you'd let them treat you like that." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's better to let people show you who they really are." "And James?" "That's a decision for another day." As the car pulled away, my phone buzzed relentlessly with messages. From James, from Richard, even one from Caroline. But the one from Victoria stood out. "Emma, dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding." I turned off my phone. Asia needed my attention, and my life needed a fresh perspective. As my mother always said, each day is a new opportunity, and tonight, I'd seized mine. The next morning, I woke up in my private office at Genesis Tech, the resolution to the Asia crisis neatly tucked away in my outbox. A late-night video conference with our Shanghai partners and decisive action had steered the company away from disaster. As sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Mrs. Chen." Sarah, my assistant, peeked in. "Your husband is in the lobby. Again. This is his third attempt since dawn." I sighed and glanced at my phone. 47 missed calls, 93 texts, and an avalanche of emails. Victoria alone had sent 28 increasingly frantic messages. "Send him up, Sarah. It's time we talked." When James walked in, he looked nothing like his usual polished self. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and his tie was nowhere to be seen. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the sleek office, the awards on the walls, and the panoramic view of the bay. "Emma," he began, his voice hesitant. "This is really your office." "For the past 2 years," I replied, motioning for him to sit. "Not that you ever asked." He sank into one of the visitor chairs, his gaze dropping. "I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That I'm more than the girl your mother looks down on. That I've built a career while you stood by and said nothing. When exactly was I supposed to do that, James? In between your mother's jabs or your silence?" He winced. "Mom's difficult." "Difficult?" I repeated, crossing my arms. She made me eat in the kitchen on Christmas, and you let her. I was going to say something, but you didn't. You never do. My voice was calm but firm. 2 years, James. 2 years of watching you laugh at your mother's jokes about my background. 2 years of staying silent while she paraded Caroline in front of me. 2 years of you being ashamed of me, or at least of what you thought I was. I wasn't ashamed, he protested. Weren't you? Then why didn't you ever ask about my work? Why didn't you visit me here? Why didn't you defend me? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. The board approved your Asia strategy, he said. Stocks up 12% already. Excellent work. Thank you, Marcus. I'll finalize the timeline today. When I hung up, James stared at me, his face pale. You report directly to Marcus Sterling. I have for years, I said, my tone matter of fact. Remember last Christmas when I missed your mother's party because of overtime? I was in Tokyo, finalizing a $1 billion deal, but you assumed I was working a shift at a warehouse. Emma, I didn't know, he pleaded. Please, give me another chance. I shook my head. That's the problem, James. Now that you know I'm successful, you want to make things right. What about when you thought I was just a grocery store girl? Didn't I deserve respect then? The silence between us was deafening, and in it, I found my answer. A knock on the door interrupted us. Sarah appeared again, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Wilson is here. She's insistent. I nodded. Sent her in. Victoria swept in, dressed impeccably as always, though her usual composure was absent. Her eyes flitted around the room, widening as they landed on my credentials and accolades. Emma, darling, she began, her voice sticky sweet. We need to clear up this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I arched an eyebrow. You mean where you made me eat in the kitchen, or where you've spent 2 years treating me like I was beneath you? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I didn't know who you were. And that, I said sharply, is the root of the problem. You judge me based on my parents' grocery store. Tell me, Victoria, how much do you think Genesis Tech paid for my supply chain system? She blinked, floundering. I don't. $300 million. Before I even graduated. That modest store taught me everything about respect and hard work. Concepts you still haven't grasped. Emma, James interjected. People can change. Give us a chance to make this right. I opened my laptop, revealing an email from my lawyer. 2 years, James. Have given you plenty of chances. I met his gaze. I'm filing for divorce. Victoria gasped. You can't. Think of James's future. I am, and mine. I stood. The prenup you insisted on. It protects my assets as much as his, and the Pacific Heights mansion. I bought it last year. Check the property records. James sank back, stunned. All this time, while you let your mother belittle me, I was building something real. I pressed a button on my desk. Sarah, please escort Mrs. Wilson out. James, you have until Friday to move your things to your parents' house. Emma, think of what people will say. Victoria exclaimed as security arrived. They'll say what I should have said years ago. Respect isn't earned by a bank account. It's earned by treating people with dignity. I turned to James. Your mother spent 2 years trying to make me feel small. She only succeeded in showing me how small she is. As they left, I stood by the window, watching the fog roll over the bay. A text from my mother appeared on my phone. Mai tan du shaik sin de jihui. Each day is a new opportunity. Smiling, I drafted a press release about Genesis Tech's triumph. The stock would close at a record high that day. But my true success wasn't in the numbers. It was in knowing I'd reclaimed my self-worth. 6 months later, I closed another quarterly report. The divorce was final, the house sold, and Victoria had a new cautionary tale for her bridge club. None of it mattered anymore. Sarah knocked. Mrs. Chen, your parents are here for lunch. I closed my laptop, smiling. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And the best revenge? It's not served cold in a kitchen. It's served in a corner office, surrounded by those who saw your worth all along.